Let me cook. I can't believe that is the phrase that changed my life. Because most of the time, the ideas that I shared didn't come from a place of confidence, but rather they came from a place of anger, frustration, and resentment. I came from a life that was full of love, but not always full of stability or security. And I want to be very careful with how I tell the story because I know my parents loved me, and I never doubted for a second that they cared. But love doesn't always come with security or understanding. And when you're a kid, that difference really matters. For much of my childhood, I didn't feel understood. I didn't feel secure. I didn't feel welcome in the way a kid needs to feel welcome. But when you're that young, you don't really have the language to say that. So you just kind of learn and adapt. But I need to take my part in this too. I was a difficult kid. I was emotional. I was intense. I had a lot of big feelings, including anger, and I didn't know how to regulate those. I had constant outbursts, and I always felt things so deeply, even when others didn't. I vividly remember in 4th or 5th grade, the first time I was told it isn't that deep. And I never believed that. I still don't, because everything is that deep. But when I was young, I didn't really have the words to articulate that. I felt things well before I could understand them. I reacted before I could explain myself, and when you don't have the language to understand what's going on inside of you, you almost always express it sideways. On top of that, I was, conventionally speaking, weird. I didn't really fit in with my peers, and I didn't really understand the social cues that everyone else seemed to pick up so naturally. So, when you're emotionally sensitive, you're already struggling emotionally at home, and now you're struggling socially, all of that struggle compounds. I didn't just feel misunderstood. I felt unwanted. So, I learned to armor up. I became sharp, quick-witted, defensive. I was intense, all because I didn't know how to let people get close to me without getting hurt. And I sincerely love my parents, deeply. I really do. But I don't think I could have said the same thing as a kid, because I was confused. I was young, I was hurt, and I couldn't recognize it was my parents' first time living too. There was many times I didn't know where I was going to sleep, where I felt I was being pushed away instead of pulled in. And when that happens to you at such a young age, you become wired a certain way. People say childhoods like that build character. They make you tough. And maybe they do. But for me, it mostly made me angry. Not this explosive anger, at least not right out the gate, more this constant tension that I was constantly bracing for something to go wrong. I didn't feel safe staying still or slowing down. I didn't feel safe trusting people. I could barely trust myself. And when you grow up like that, you typically don't develop confidence very fast. You usually develop fear, and therefore you develop control. I didn't care about being strong. I just wanted to protect myself. And because of that, the instability, more particularly the anger, church became really important early on. At the very least, it was supposed to. I needed a firm foundation, something solid that I could stand on. And my cousin's church presented itself that way. But very quickly, it no longer felt like safety. It felt like pressure. I learned very quickly that love was conditional, that approval had to be earned, that being good meant being obedient, small, and quiet. God wasn't introduced to me as someone who walked with me, but rather someone who was watching me, waiting for me to slip up and kick me out of the family. And it wasn't just the authority or the rules, although those had their problems as well. It was the people. The kids my age made me feel exactly how my peers at school made me feel. Unwelcome, misunderstood. Like I didn't belong anywhere, not even in the church. Once again, I didn't seem to understand these unspoken rules everyone else seemed to follow. And instead of being taught them, I felt like I was left out to dry. So, at church, instead of feeling at home, I felt how I felt everywhere else. I wasn't a part of the group. I wasn't chosen. I wasn't included. I was, once again, outside. And when you're a kid, that hurts, obviously. But when it's at a place that's supposed to represent love, it cuts a little deeper. Because church isn't about the people. When you feel rejected at church, you don't feel rejected socially. You feel rejected by God. So I never learned how to trust God, but I learned how to fear him. And that fear quickly became resentment. The church, the place that was supposed to give me belonging, ended up reinforcing the same belief I already had, that I didn't belong anywhere. Not at all. By the time I was a teenager, I wanted nothing to do with God. I was a self-proclaimed atheist, and a confident one at that. I wanted nothing to do with faith or religion, certainly not Christianity, and certainly not the church. And around that same time, my mom had left, albeit not by her own accord. The fights between my parents had just become too much. And later on, my dad had found a new partner. And I also needed to take accountability for this part as well. Just like I wasn't an easy kid, I wasn't an easy teenager either. I was still emotional. I was still angry. But now, I was also violent. I picked fights with pretty much everybody, provoked or not. I got in more fights at school than I'd care to admit, and my fights at home with my dad and his girlfriend had only gotten worse. We're all intense people, and when intensity is met with a severe lack of maturity, you can only imagine the outcome. By the time I was 14, I was now sneaking alcohol for my dad. And this will be the first time that I will have ever said this publicly. And it mattered because that was the start of a lot of issues moving forward. I was a smart kid, so my grades never really slipped, and outwardly, I seemed fine. But internally, it was only getting worse. I was drinking more and more. I was angrier. I was more reckless, to the point that my high school forced me into a school-sanctioned anger management just to get me to be a little nicer to people. And my relationship with either my parents or my dad's girlfriend never really stabilized either. But in 2021, I discovered my love for bodybuilding. And I don't say this lightly, but bodybuilding actually saved me. I didn't quit sneaking drinks, but I finally felt like I had direction, like I could pour myself into something and build something out of it. I felt like I finally had something I could put forth effort into, and it would actually mean something. And because of this, my anger started to cool. I regulated my emotions a little better, and I could articulate my thoughts just a touch more. But I still wasn't a good guy. I still was sneaking drinks, still lying, still being reckless, still talking to several girls at the same time, and still getting in fights back at home. There's many times I didn't know where I was going to sleep, and I became a pretty good couch hopper at that. And then high school ended, and I was still the worst. That summer before college, my drinking was also the worst. I was sleeping on my friend's couch, sleeping in my friend's camper, constantly intoxicated, flirting with one girl on Snapchat while hanging out with a different girl. I was, for lack of a better word, a total dick. But college came, and a few months later, it was my first college winter break. Also, my 19th birthday. I was staying with my dad. We were trying to establish a better relationship than we have had in the past, and we had these extravagant plans for my 19th. We were going to invite a bunch of my friends over. He was going to make dinner and a cake, and it was going to be great. Not a single one of my friends showed up. Not one. My dad came home from work, and he was exhausted, so he got drunk and fell asleep on the couch. So I spent my birthday alone. I went to the gym and saw all of my friends who were invited to my birthday training together. And I felt like I was a kid again, unwanted and unwelcome. So then I went home. I climbed onto the roof of my dad's house, screaming at something or someone about how awful my life was and how sick of it I was. I was going to jump off. But as my feet were on the edge of the roof and I was still just screaming and hollering, my phone buzzes. Open it up, it's my buddy Jerry. He texted me, "Hey man, happy birthday. I know you're in town, do you want to go to church?" And I said no, as I had several times in the past, because Jerry would always invite me to church. But he didn't know I was standing on my roof, about to end the life that I was given. Something shifted. I was no longer screaming at something or someone. I was screaming at God. And in that moment, in anger, I found God. And I realized I was never an atheist. I was just treating God the same way that the world had treated me. I misunderstood him. I resented him. And I wanted to make him feel like he was unwelcome. So, I climbed down. From that point on, I spent the next year of my life growing up. I got sober. I started rebuilding my faith. I started taking responsibility for the life I was given and the life I was leading. And I realized something I believed my whole life. Everything really is that deep. I just now had the words, the language, and the responsibility to articulate it. And I decided that wasn't going to go to waste. I'm 21 now, and I've grown up a lot. I've righted the wrongs that I could, and I took responsibility for the wrongs that I couldn't undo. And for the first time in a long time, I can honestly say that I've become a man that I am proud of. Not because I'm perfect, not because I've made it, but because my life finally has direction. And I still believe something I've believed my entire life. Everything is that deep. The only difference is this time, I'm not going to keep it to myself. I originally went to college to become a health education teacher. I really wanted to serve the next generation, to take autonomy within their health and also help them express their mental health. I was also posting on TikTok at the time. Not as a business, not as a strategy, just as a way to get the thoughts out of my head and try to make sense of life out loud. Well, in October, I had my first viral video. In November, I hit 100,000 followers. In December, a supplement company, a fitness company as a whole, Echovision, whom I've been using for 3 years at the time, reached out to me and signed me as an official athlete. Then in January, I hit 500,000 followers. And if you would have told me that at this point, I would have changed my major to pursue social media and to inspire others full time, I would have called you crazy. But here we are. And the more this grew, the more clear something became. This wasn't about numbers or entertainment, and it certainly wasn't about validation. It was about impact. The same depth that I was suppressing as a kid was resonating with people now. So, this channel isn't about purely motivation or aesthetic videos or making life seem fun and easy, because it certainly isn't. But it's about showing you guys who Lyric, the guy you let cook, really is. The training, the travel, the friendships, the good times, the bad times, the doubts, everything life throws at me, I will share. Not as a performance, not as someone I'm not, but simply as who I am. Because life is that deep, and I want to share it with you all. So, as we get into this channel, let me cook, and God bless.